I knew the date was ending badly when Marcus checked his phone for the third time in 10 minutes. We were sitting in a restaurant that tried too hard. White tablecloths, candles that smelled like artificial pine, a pianist playing Christmas standards with the enthusiasm of a hostage. My best friend had sworn Marcus was perfect for me. Stable, kind, ready to settle down. What she hadn't mentioned was that he'd spend the entire evening comparing me to his ex-wife. Jennifer always ordered the salmon, he said, watching me cut into my chicken. She said it was the only fish that didn't smell like the ocean. I set down my fork. Marcus. Do you want to be here? He blinked, startled, as if I'd asked him to solve a complex equation. Then his face softened into something worse than annoyance. Pity. You're a nice woman, Claire, he said. Really? But I don't think this is going to work. The pianist started playing Silent Night. I felt the heat rise in my chest, not from anger but from humiliation so complete it made my hands shake. I'd worn a new dress. I'd convinced myself that maybe, this time, someone would look at me and see something worth staying for. Right, I said quietly. I'll get the check. No, I'll get it. I paid in cash. Marcus didn't argue. He muttered something about an early meeting and was gone before the waiter brought back my change. I sat there for a moment, staring at the empty chair across from me. The restaurant was half full, couples leaning toward each other, hands clasped over the table. I felt like a smudge on a photograph, something that didn't belong in the frame. I left. Outside, the December cold hit me like a slap. Snow had started falling, soft and silent, clinging to the shoulders of my coat. I pulled my scarf tighter and started walking, not toward the subway, but toward nowhere. I just needed to move. The streets were busy, tourists taking photos, couples window shopping, groups of friends laughing too loud. I passed a bakery with a window display of gingerbread houses, their frosting perfect, their lives contained and sweet. I turned down a quieter street. That's when I heard the crying. At first, I thought it was an animal, a cat, maybe. But as I got closer, I realized it was a child. A small boy, maybe 4 or 5, standing outside a closed cafe, sobbing into his hands. I stopped. Looked around. No parents, no adults at all. Hey, I said softly, crouching down to his level. Are you okay? He looked up at me with eyes so dark they were almost black, tears streaming down his cheeks. His coat was too big for him, expensive looking, the kind of thing you'd see in a magazine. I can't find my papa, he whispered. My chest tightened. Okay. That's okay. We'll find him. What's your name? Luca. Hi, Luca. I'm Claire. Can you tell me what your papa looks like? He sniffled. Tall. He has a scar. He touched his own cheek, tracing a line from his temple to his jaw. I pulled out my phone. Should we call him? Luca shook his head violently. He said not to bother him. He said to wait. Where were you supposed to wait? Inside. He pointed at the cafe. But they closed. I glanced at the darkened windows, the closed sign hanging crooked on the door. Whoever had left this child here hadn't come back. All right, I said, keeping my voice steady. Let's find him together. Do you know where he might be? Before Luca could answer, I heard footsteps. Not casual footsteps. Purposeful. Fast. I turned. A man was walking toward us, and the air seemed to change around him. He was tall, taller than Marcus, taller than anyone I'd dated, with dark hair pushed back from his face and a jawline that looked carved from stone. He wore a black coat that fit him like armor, and his eyes locked onto Luca with an intensity that made my breath catch. Then he saw me. He stopped. For a moment, no one moved. Snow fell between us, silent and cold. His gaze shifted from Luca to me, and I felt the weight of it like a hand pressed against my throat. Luca, he said, his voice low and controlled. Come here. Luca ran to him immediately, wrapping his arms around the man's legs. The man, his father clearly, rested a hand on the boy's head but didn't look away from me. "Who are you?" he asked. "Claire." My voice came out steadier than I expected. I found him crying. I was just trying to help. His eyes narrowed, just slightly. "You shouldn't involve yourself in things you don't understand." It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. I stood up slowly, brushing snow off my coat. "He's a child. He was alone." "He wasn't alone." The man's voice didn't rise, but something in it made my pulse quicken. I was 10 feet away. I glanced past him. The street was empty except for a black car idling at the curb, its windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. "Then maybe you should have stayed closer," I said before I could stop myself. The man's expression didn't change, but Luca looked up at him, then at me. "Papa, she's nice. She didn't leave." The man's jaw tightened. He crouched down, eye level with his son, and said something in Italian. Low, quick, unintelligible to me. Luca nodded, then turned back to me. "Can you be my new mom?" he asked. The world tilted. I stared at him, then at his father, whose face had gone carefully blank. "Luca," he started. "She stayed," Luca said, his voice breaking. "She didn't leave." The man stood slowly, and when he looked at me again, there was something different in his eyes. Not warmth, but something close to recognition. "Get in the car," he said. I blinked. "What?" "You helped my son. I owe you a drink." He tilted his head slightly. "Or would you prefer to walk home alone in the snow?" It wasn't really a question. I should have said no. I should have smiled, waved goodbye, and disappeared into the safe, predictable cold. But something in the way he looked at me, like I was a puzzle he didn't expect to find, made me stay. "One drink," I said. He nodded once. Then he opened the car door, and I got in. The car smelled like leather and something darker. Smoke, maybe. Or expensive cologne that clung to fabric. Luca sat between us, his small hand wrapped around 3 of my fingers. He hadn't let go since we got in. The man, his father, sat with his back straight, one arm draped across the seat behind Luca, not touching me but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. He hadn't introduced himself, hadn't said a word since telling the driver to go. I watched the city slide past the tinted windows, the Christmas lights blurring into streaks of red and gold. We weren't heading toward any bar I recognized. We were moving away from the tourist streets, toward the quieter parts of the city where buildings hunched together like conspirators. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere private." His voice was calm, but it didn't comfort me. I glanced at Luca, who was staring up at me with those 2 dark eyes. "Do you like hot chocolate?" he asked. "I do," I said softly. "Papa makes the best hot chocolate. He puts cinnamon in it." I looked at the man. He was watching me, his expression unreadable. "You make hot chocolate?" I asked, trying to sound normal, trying to ignore the way my pulse was hammering in my throat. "Sometimes." The car turned down a narrow street and stopped in front of a building I wouldn't have looked at twice. Old brick, no sign, a single door with a brass handle polished to a shine. The driver got out and opened the door without a word. The man stepped out first, then held his hand toward Luca. The boy climbed out, still holding on to me, pulling me with him. I stood on the sidewalk, snow melting into my hair, and stared at the building. "This is a bar?" I asked. "It's mine." He didn't wait for my response. He walked toward the door, and Luca tugged me forward. I followed because I didn't know what else to do, because something about the way this man moved made refusal feel impossible. Inside, the air was warmer, heavier. The space was small, a few tables, a a bar along one wall, shelves lined with bottles I didn't recognize. It was empty except for a man behind the bar, older, with silver hair and a face that had seen too much. He looked up when we entered, his eyes moving from the man to me. He didn't smile. "Enzo," he said quietly. "Didn't expect you tonight." So that was his name. Enzo. "Antonio," Enzo replied, his hand resting lightly on Luca's shoulder. "We need the back room." Antonio nodded and disappeared through a door behind the bar. Enzo guided us toward a booth in the corner, away from the windows. Luca climbed onto the seat and patted the space next to him. I sat. Enzo sat across from us, his hands folded on the table, his gaze steady. "You should have gone home," he said. "You didn't give me the chance." His mouth almost curved. "Almost. You could have refused." "Could I?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Luca. "Go ask Antonio for your drink." Luca hesitated, glancing at me. "Will you still be here?" The question landed like a stone in my chest. "I'll be here," I said. He slid off the seat and ran toward the bar, his footsteps echoing in the quiet. Enzo waited until he was out of earshot. Then he leaned forward, just slightly, and the air between us shifted. "Why did you stop?" he asked. "What?" "On the street. Most people would have kept walking." I held his gaze. He was crying. "And that's enough? A crying child?" "Yes." He studied me, his eyes moving across my face like he was searching for something hidden beneath the surface. I felt exposed, seen in a way I hadn't felt all night. Maybe longer. "You're either very kind or very foolish," he said. "Maybe both." This time his mouth did curve, just barely. "What were you doing out there alone?" I thought about Marcus, about the restaurant, the empty chair, the pity in his voice. Bad date. "He left you?" I let him. Enzo's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. His loss. The words were simple, throwaway, but the way he said them, low, certain, made my throat tighten. Antonio returned with 2 glasses of wine and a mug of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. Luca carried it carefully back to the table, his tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. "I didn't spill," he announced proudly. "Good man," Enzo said quietly. Luca climbed back into the booth beside me and took a sip, leaving a white mustache on his upper lip. I smiled, despite myself. "Do you have kids?" Luca asked me suddenly. "No." "Why not?" "Luca," Enzo said, his voice firm but not harsh. "It's okay," I said. I looked at the boy, at his open, hopeful face. "I guess I just haven't found the right person yet." "My mama left," Luca said, matter of fact. "Papa says she wasn't ready to be a family." I glanced at Enzo. His jaw was tight, his fingers wrapped around his glass like he was holding himself in place. "I'm sorry," I said softly. Luca shrugged. "It's okay. Papa takes care of me. But sometimes I think it would be nice to have someone else. Someone who stays." The weight of his words pressed against my ribs. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to tell this child that people left, that staying wasn't always a choice, that sometimes love wasn't enough. Enzo set down his glass. "Luca, finish your drink. We're leaving soon." "But now." Luca obeyed, slurping the last of his hot chocolate in silence. Enzo turned to me. "I'll have my driver take you home." "You don't have to." "I do." He stood, pulling a card from his pocket and sliding it across the table. Black, no logo, just a phone number embossed in silver. "If you ever need anything, call." I picked up the card, the paper thick and expensive between my fingers. "Why would I need anything?" He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned down, close enough that I could smell the smoke and winter on his coat. "Because now you've met me." he said quietly. And that changes things. He straightened, took Luca's hand, and walked toward the door. I sat there, the card burning in my palm, and wondered what I'd just stepped into. I didn't call for 3 days. The card sat on my kitchen counter, propped against the coffee maker where I'd see it every morning. Black and minimal, like everything about Enzo. I told myself I'd throw it away. That whatever had happened that night was a strange blip, a moment outside my normal life that didn't need to be repeated. But I didn't throw it away. On the third night, I came home to find my apartment door ajar. Not wide open, just enough that I could see the darkness inside, could feel the wrongness of it before I even touched the handle. My landlord had mentioned break-ins in the neighborhood, addicts looking for easy cash, but I'd always felt safe on the 4th floor. I pulled out my phone, finger hovering over 911. Instead, I dialed the number on the card. He answered on the first ring. Claire. Not a question. He knew it was me. How did you... I stopped. My apartment door is open. I'm in the hallway. I don't know if someone's inside. Silence. Then, don't go in. What's your address? I told him. Stay on the line. Don't move. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, phone clutched in both hands, and listened to the nothing on the other end. Not silence. I could hear him breathing, hear the muffled sound of movement, a car door closing. Enzo? I'm here. You don't have to come. I can just call the police. No police. His voice was firm. I'm 10 minutes away. Wait for me. The line went quiet but didn't disconnect. I stood there, counting my heartbeats, watching my door like it might swing open on its own. 7 minutes later, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate. Enzo appeared at the landing, wearing dark jeans and a shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. 2 men followed behind him, one broad-shouldered and silent, the other lean with sharp eyes that swept the hallway like he was cataloging exits. Enzo's gaze found mine immediately. You're all right? I nodded. He gestured to the 2 men without looking at them. They moved past me, into my apartment, their movements practiced and efficient. Enzo stayed beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, the solid presence that made the hallway feel less exposed. Who are they? I whispered. People I trust. The broad-shouldered one emerged first, shaking his head. Empty. Back window was forced. They're gone. Enzo's jaw tightened. How long? An hour, maybe less. Amateurs. Didn't take anything valuable. The lean one appeared, holding my laptop. This was on the floor. Nothing else touched. Enzo took it from him, turned it over in his hands, then looked at me. Is this everything? No documents missing? No files? I don't know. I haven't been inside. He handed the laptop back to the lean man. Marco? Luca's with Rosa? Yes? Good. Stay with her tonight. Dante, check the perimeter and the other apartments. Make sure they're not still in the building. Both men left without a word. Enzo turned to me. Come on. He walked into my apartment like he owned it, flipping on lights, checking corners I'd never thought to look at twice. I followed, feeling strange in my own space, seeing it through his eyes, the second-hand furniture, the stack of library books on the coffee table, the single coffee mug in the sink. He stopped in the middle of my living room and looked at me. Pack a bag. What? You're not staying here tonight. Enzo, it was just a break-in. It happens. Not to you. The certainty in his voice made me pause. What does that mean? He crossed to the window, examining the broken lock. You called me instead of the police. Why? I didn't have a good answer. I don't know. Yes, you do. He turned, his eyes catching the light from the street. You felt it. Something wasn't right. He was right. The door had been opened just enough, like an invitation, like someone wanted me to see. Who would do this? I asked quietly. I don't know yet. He stepped closer. But until I do, you're not safe here. I can't just leave. I have work tomorrow. I have a life you want to keep. He said it simply, without drama. So pack a bag. 20 minutes later, I was back in his car, my overnight bag on the seat beside me. We drove in silence through streets I didn't recognize, heading toward a part of the city where the buildings grew taller and the lights softer. Where are we going? I asked. My home. My stomach flipped. Enzo, I can't. You can. Luca will be happy to see you. The way he said it, casual and certain, made it impossible to argue. We pulled up to a building that looked like it belonged in a different city. Old stone, iron gates, the kind of place that whispered old money and older secrets. Enzo led me through the lobby, past a doorman who nodded without speaking, into an elevator with mirrors on every wall. I watched our reflection, him tall and composed, me smaller, clutching my bag like a lifeline. Why are you doing this? I asked. He looked at me in the mirror. You helped my son. That's not a reason to. You didn't ask questions, didn't judge, didn't try to fix him. His voice was quiet. You just stayed. The elevator opened directly into his apartment, a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was beautiful and cold, all clean lines and dark wood, except for the corner near the window where a pile of toy cars sat scattered across the floor. Luca's corner. The guest room is down the hall, Enzo said. Second door. You'll be safe here. How do you know? He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something unguarded in his face. Not softness, but something close. A crack in the armor. Because no one gets past me, he said. And I believed him. I woke to the smell of coffee and something sweeter. Cinnamon, maybe vanilla. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. The bed was too soft, the sheets too expensive, the ceiling unfamiliar. Then it came back, the broken window, the drive through dark streets. Enzo's voice saying, "You'll be safe here." I checked my phone. 6:30 in the morning. I'd slept 4 hours, maybe less. I pulled on my jeans and the sweater I'd packed, ran my fingers through my hair, and opened the door. The apartment looked different in daylight. Less cold, somehow. The windows let in pale winter sun that caught on the edges of things. A framed photograph on the shelf, the chrome handle of a cabinet, the steam rising from a cup on the counter. Enzo stood in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing dark pants and a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He was making pancakes. I stopped in the doorway. He glanced up, spatula in hand, and something passed across his face too quickly for me to name. "You're awake," he said. "You're making pancakes. Luca won't eat anything else on Saturdays." He flipped one expertly onto a plate. "Coffee?" "Please." He poured without asking how I took it, black, no sugar, and slid the cup across the counter. I wrapped my hands around it, grateful for the warmth. "Where is Luca?" I asked. "Still asleep. He doesn't wake before 8 on weekends." Enzo turned back to the stove, adding another pancake to the stack. "You slept badly." It wasn't a question. "How do you know?" "I heard you moving around at 3. I felt heat creep up my neck. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." He set the spatula down and looked at me. "I don't sleep much." There was something in the way he said it. Matter of fact, but heavy, like he was confessing to a wound that never healed. I wanted to ask why, wanted to know what kept a man like him awake at night, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, "Thank you for last night." "You don't need to thank me." "I do. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." He picked up his own coffee, leaned against the counter. You called me, Claire. Not the police. Not a friend. Me. I don't know why I did that. Yes, you do. We stared at each other across the kitchen, and I felt the air thicken between us, felt the pull of something I didn't understand. He was dangerous. I knew that without being told, knew it in the way people moved around him, the way his men obeyed without question. The way he held himself like violence was always an option. But he'd made pancakes for his son. And somehow, that made everything worse. Luca appeared 20 minutes later, rubbing his eyes, his hair sticking up in every direction. When he saw me, his face lit up. Claire, you're here! He ran to me, wrapping his arms around my waist before I could react. I looked at Enzo, who was watching us with an expression I couldn't read. I'm here, I said softly, smoothing Luca's hair. Are you staying forever? My chest tightened. Just for today, sweetheart. His face fell, but he didn't argue. He climbed onto the stool beside me and reached for a pancake. Enzo put 3 on his plate without being asked, then drizzled them with syrup in a precise spiral. You have to cut them into triangles, Luca informed me seriously. Papa always does. Enzo met my eyes across the counter. Triangles taste better. Obviously, I said. Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close enough to make my pulse skip. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that felt rare and fragile. Luca chattered between bites, telling me about his school, his favorite toy car, the pigeon he'd seen on the balcony yesterday. Enzo listened, interjecting occasionally, and I watched the way they moved around each other, practiced, easy, a unit. I wondered where Luca's mother was, why she'd left, what kind of woman walked away from this. After breakfast, Luca dragged me to his room to show me his collection of toy cars, dozens of them, organized by color on shelves that looked custom-built. He told me the name of each one, which was the fastest, which one Papa had given him for his birthday. This one's my favorite, he said, holding up a black sports car with silver detailing. It looks like Papa's real car. Your Papa has good taste, I said. He says cars should be fast and quiet, like secrets. I looked up to find Enzo standing in the doorway, watching us. How long had he been there? Luca, he said quietly. Go get dressed. We're going out. Where? Shopping. Claire needs things. Luca grinned and ran past his father, leaving us alone in the room full of tiny cars. Enzo stepped inside, his presence filling the space. You can't go back to your apartment yet. Enzo. They didn't take anything, Claire. They broke in and left. That's not how robberies work. The weight of his words settled over me. You think they were looking for something specific. Or someone. He moved closer, and I could smell soap and coffee on him, could see the faint shadow of exhaustion under his eyes. Until I know which, you stay here. I have a life, a job. Call in sick. I can't just... You can. He reached out, and for a moment I thought he was going to touch my face, but his hand stopped mid-air, hovering between us. Please. The word surprised me, soft and raw, like it cost him something to say it. Why does this matter to you? I whispered. His hand dropped. Because Luca asked you to stay, and I haven't seen him smile at anyone the way he smiles at you since his mother left. That's not fair to him, or to me. I know. He stepped back, his walls rebuilding. But it's the truth. He left before I could respond. I sat there surrounded by toy cars and the ghost of words I couldn't say, and wondered how a single night had unraveled my entire life. Shopping with Enzo felt like stepping into an alternate reality. We went to places I'd never been, boutiques with buzzers on the door, stores where the salespeople knew his name, where they brought champagne I didn't drink and looked at me like they were trying to solve a puzzle. Luca held my hand the entire time, pointing at things he thought I'd like, asking questions that made the salespeople smile. "Do you like blue or green?" he asked, holding up 2 scarves. "Blue," I said. "Papa, she likes blue." Enzo nodded at the salesperson, who folded both scarves into tissue paper. "We'll take them." "Enzo, you don't need to. You need clothes. I'm buying them." He said it like the conversation was over. Maybe it was. By the time we left the 3rd store, my arms were full of bags I hadn't asked for. Sweaters, jeans, a coat that probably cost more than my rent. Enzo carried twice as many without looking burdened. Luca skipped ahead of us, humming a song I didn't recognize. "This is too much," I said quietly. "It's practical. It's excessive." He stopped walking, turned to face me. We were standing in the middle of a street decorated for Christmas, lights strung between lampposts, fake snow in shop windows. People moved around us like water around stones. "You left your apartment with 1 bag," Enzo said. "You're staying in my home. You need things. This isn't charity, Claire, it's logistics." "Logistics?" I repeated. "Yes." "And if I said no?" His jaw tightened. "You won't. You're very sure of yourself." "I have to be." He shifted the bags to one hand, and for a moment, he looked tired. Not physically, something deeper. It's how I keep people safe. The way he said people, like he meant something more specific. Like he meant Luca. Like maybe he meant me. We had lunch at a small Italian restaurant, tucked down an alley I never would have found on my own. The owner greeted Enzo like family, kissed both his cheeks, ruffled Luca's hair, then looked at me with open curiosity. "And who is this?" he asked in accented English. "A friend," Enzo said simply. The owner, Giovanni, he introduced himself, grinned. "A friend, of course." He winked at me. "He never brings friends." We sat at a table by the window. Luca ordered spaghetti and spent 10 minutes telling Giovanni exactly how much cheese he wanted. Enzo ordered for both of us without asking. Some kind of pasta I'd never heard of. Wine that tasted like summer. "You come here often?" I asked. "Once a week. Luca likes the tiramisu." "And you?" He looked at me over his wine glass. "I like that no one asks questions." Giovanni brought bread, still warm, and olive oil that gleamed gold in the light. Luca tore off a piece and dipped it, making a mess. Enzo handed him a napkin without looking, his movements automatic. "How long have you been doing this alone?" I asked quietly. Enzo's hand stilled on his glass. 2 years. That's a long time. It's not long enough to forget. He set down the glass. His mother left when he was 3. Disappeared one morning while I was at work. No note. No explanation. Just gone. The pain in his voice was buried deep, but I heard it. "Did you look for her?" "For 6 months." He looked out the window, his profile sharp against the light. Then I stopped. "Why?" "Because she didn't want to be found. And Luca needed me to stop searching for someone who didn't want to come back." Luca was humming again, oblivious, building a tower out of sugar packets. I watched him, this small boy who asked strangers to be his mother, and felt something crack open in my chest. "He's lucky to have you," I said. Enzo turned back to me. "He asked me this morning if you were staying." "What did you tell him?" "That I didn't know." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his eyes holding mine. What should I have told him, Claire? The question hung between us, heavy and impossible. "I don't know," I whispered. "Neither do I." After lunch, we walked through a park strung with lights. Luca ran ahead, chasing pigeons, his laughter cutting through the cold air. Enzo walked beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yes." "What do you do? For work?" He didn't answer immediately. We walked another 10 steps before he spoke. I manage investments, property, businesses. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. I could feel the shape of what he wasn't saying, the careful way he chose his words. And the men from last night? Marco and Dante? They work for me. Doing what? He stopped walking, looked at me with something like resignation. Keeping things running, smoothly. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you right now. He stepped closer and I could see the conflict in his face, wanting to tell me, wanting to protect me from knowing. If I told you everything, you'd leave. You don't know that. I do. His voice was quiet, certain, and I'm not ready for you to leave yet. The admission landed between us like something fragile. Enzo. Papa. Claire. Look. We turned. Luca was standing under a street lamp, arms spread wide, snowflakes catching in his hair. He was spinning in circles, laughing, completely unaware of the weight of the conversation he'd just interrupted. Enzo's expression softened. We should go. He'll catch cold. He started walking toward his son, and I followed, my heart hammering against my ribs. That night, after Luca went to bed, I sat in the guest room with the door open, listening to the sounds of Enzo moving through the apartment, water running, a door closing, footsteps in the hall. He stopped outside my room. I held my breath. Good night, Claire, he said through the door. Good night. His footsteps faded. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and wondered how long I could stay in this place between knowing and not knowing. How long before I had to choose? I woke to voices, not loud. Enzo never raised his voice, but urgent, sharp. I checked my phone. 2 a.m. The apartment was dark except for a sliver of light coming from under the living room door. I should have stayed in bed. Should have pulled the covers over my head and pretended I heard nothing. Instead, I opened my door. Can't keep her here, Enzo. It's too dangerous. Marco's voice, low and insistent. Where else would she go? Enzo's reply was controlled, but I heard the edge underneath. Back to an apartment someone already broke into? You don't know that was about her. And you don't know it wasn't. Silence. Then Marco again, quieter. Luca's getting attached. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you are too. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. That's not your concern, Enzo said. It is when it makes you careless. Marco's voice hardened. She's a civilian. She doesn't belong in this world. And the longer she stays, the more danger she's in. You know that. I know. Enzo's voice cracked, just slightly. Just enough. I know, Marco. More silence. Heavier this time. Then let her go, Marco said, before someone uses her to get to you. I heard footsteps moving toward the hallway. I slipped back into my room, closed the door silently, and stood there in the dark, trying to breathe. Someone uses her to get to you. What kind of life was this? What had I walked into? I climbed back into bed but didn't sleep. I watched the shadows on the ceiling and tried to convince myself to pack my bag, to leave in the morning, to go back to my small, safe, predictable life. But all I could think about was Luca's hand in mine, and the way Enzo had said, I'm not ready for you to leave yet. Morning came too bright and too fast. Luca knocked on my door at 7:30, already dressed, carrying a toy car in each hand. Claire, are you awake? I opened the door. His smile made my chest ache. I'm awake. Papa's making waffles, the good kind, with whipped cream. Give me 5 minutes. He nodded seriously and ran back down the hall. I washed my face, pulled my hair into something presentable, and walked into the kitchen. Enzo was at the stove, his back to me. He was wearing jeans and a gray sweater that made him look almost ordinary, Almost. Morning, I said quietly. He turned. His eyes found mine, and I saw the exhaustion there, the weight of whatever he'd been carrying through the night. Morning, he said. Coffee? Please. We moved around each other carefully, like dancers who'd forgotten the steps. Luca filled the silence with chatter about a dream he'd had, something about flying cars and a dragon that ate ice cream. Enzo listened, responding at the right moments, but I could feel his attention on me. After breakfast, Luca went to brush his teeth. The moment he left, the air changed. You heard us last night? Enzo said. Not a question. Yes. He set down his coffee cup, his jaw tight. Then you know? Know what? That I'm in danger? That someone might use me to hurt you? I crossed my arms. No, Enzo, I don't know, because you won't tell me anything. I'm trying to protect you. By keeping me in the dark? My voice rose despite myself. By letting me walk around pretending this is normal? That I'm just staying with a friend until my apartment is safe? He stepped closer. What do you want me to say, Claire? The truth. You can't handle the truth. The words hit like a slap. I felt my face flush, felt anger and hurt tangle in my throat. Try me, I said coldly. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, and turned the screen toward me. It was a news article. 3 days old. The headline read, Local businessman found dead in apparent gang-related violence. I looked at the photo, recognized the street. It was 2 blocks from my apartment. This man worked for someone who wants what I have, Enzo said quietly. Territory, influence, control. He took back the phone. 3 days ago, they sent a message. Now they're looking for leverage. And you think I'm leverage? I think anyone close to me is. I looked toward the hallway where Luca had disappeared. Including him. Especially him. Enzo's voice turned rough. Which is why I can't let anything happen to either of you. The weight of it pressed down on me. The danger, the secrecy, the impossible position he was in. And beneath it all, the realization that he'd let me into this world, not because he wanted to, but because keeping me at a distance had become more dangerous than keeping me close. What do I do? I asked. You stay here. You don't go anywhere alone. You trust me. I don't even know you. Yes, you do. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head to meet his eyes. You knew the moment you called me instead of the police. You knew when you got in my car, when you stayed for breakfast, when you let Luca hold your hand. His voice dropped. You know me, Claire. You're just afraid of what that means. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, but he wasn't. I should go, I whispered. Where? Back to an apartment that isn't safe? To a life where you look over your shoulder every time you unlock your door? He shook his head. You're already in this. The only question is whether you trust me to keep you safe. And if I don't? Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or fear. Then I'll have Marco take you somewhere far from here. Somewhere no one will find you. He swallowed hard. And you'll never see me or Luca again. The choice hung between us, impossible and inevitable. Luca's voice echoed from the bathroom. Claire, can you help me with my toothbrush? I looked at Enzo. At this man who made waffles and kept secrets, who'd built walls around his life but somehow let me slip through. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Relief washed over his face, so raw it hurt to see. Okay, he breathed. Okay. I walked toward Luca's voice, and behind me I heard Enzo exhale. Long and shaky, like he'd been holding his breath for days. The call came during lunch. We were sitting at the kitchen table. Luca was drawing, his tongue poking out in concentration, and I was reading while Enzo worked on his laptop. It felt domestic, safe, like we'd been doing this for years instead of days. Then Enzo's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. "I need to take this," he said, already standing. He walked to his office and closed the door. Through the walls, I heard his voice, low, clipped, angry. Words I couldn't make out but could feel the weight of. Luca looked up from his drawing. "Papa sounds upset." "He's just working, sweetheart. He always sounds like that when he talks about Mama." My hand stilled on the book. "Does he talk about her often?" "No, but when he does, he gets quiet after. Like he's sad but doesn't want me to know." This child saw too much. The office door opened. Enzo emerged, his face carefully blank, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. "Luca, go to your room for a bit," he said. "But I'm not done. Now. Please." Something in his tone made Luca obey without argument. He gathered his crayons and paper and disappeared down the hall. Enzo waited until the door clicked shut. Then he looked at me. "She's back," he said. I didn't need to ask who. Luca's mother. Yes. He moved to the window, stared out at the city. "She called. Wants to see him." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward. "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow. Says she's been in Europe, that she's better now, ready to be in his life again." His voice was brittle. 2 years of silence, and she calls on a Tuesday like she just stepped out for coffee. I stood slowly, moved closer but didn't touch him. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." He pressed his palm against the glass. "She's his mother. Legally, she has rights. I can't just refuse." "Do you want to refuse?" "Yes." The word came out sharp, almost broken. Every part of me wants to tell her no, that she gave up that right when she walked away, that she doesn't get to come back just because it's convenient now. "But?" He turned to face me. "But he asks about her. Not often, but enough that I know he wonders. Wonders if he did something wrong. If he wasn't enough to make her stay." My throat tightened. He was 3, Enzo. He couldn't have... I know that. You know that. But he's 5. And in his mind, people leave because of something he is or isn't. He ran a hand through his hair. What if seeing her helps? What if it gives him closure? What if it breaks him again? Then I'll be there to put him back together. His voice was fierce, certain. Like I've always been. We stood there in the quiet, the December light slanting through the windows, and I realized I was watching a man choose between protecting his son from pain and giving him a chance at something he desperately wanted. There was no good answer. "Does she know about me?" I asked. Enzo shook his head. "She doesn't know anything except that I agreed to meet her. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, at a cafe downtown." "Are you taking Luca?" "Not yet. I need to see her first. Need to know if she's..." He trailed off, searching for the word. "Safe," I finished. "Yes." "Do you want me to come with you?" He looked at me surprised. "Why would you do that?" "Because you shouldn't have to face her alone." Something shifted in his expression. Gratitude mixed with something deeper, something that made my heart stutter. "You don't owe me that, Claire." "I know." He crossed the space between us, stopped close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from him. "If you come," he said quietly, "she'll assume things. Make assumptions about who you are to me." And what would those assumptions be? His gaze dropped to my mouth, just for a second, before returning to my eyes. "That you matter." The air felt too thin. "Do I?" I whispered. "Matter?" He reached up slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered against my jaw. "More than you should," he said. Before I could respond, Luca's door opened. Enzo stepped back immediately, the moment dissolving like sugar in water. Luca appeared in the hallway, clutching his drawing. "Can Claire see what I made?" "Of course," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He ran over and held up the paper. It was a drawing of 3 people, a tall figure in black, a small figure with dark hair, and a woman with yellow hair holding both their hands. "That's you," he said, pointing to the woman. "And that's me and Papa. We're going to the park." I looked at Enzo. His face was carefully neutral, but his eyes were storm dark. "It's beautiful," I managed. Luca beamed. "Can we go to the park? Please?" "Not today," Enzo said gently. "Maybe tomorrow." "You always say tomorrow." "Because tomorrow always comes." He crouched down, eye level with his son. "I promise. This weekend, the 3 of us." Luca considered this, then nodded. "Okay. But you have to push me on the swings, high." "Deal." Luca hugged him quickly, then ran back to his room, the drawing clutched in his hands. Enzo stayed crouched there for a moment, his head bowed. When he finally stood, he looked older. Tired. "Tomorrow," he said to me. 2 o'clock, if you still want to come." "I do." He nodded once, then walked to his office and closed the door. I stood alone in the living room, surrounded by expensive furniture and the ghost of a woman who'd left, and wondered what tomorrow would break, and whether any of us would survive it whole. The cafe was the kind of place designed to look casual, but cost a fortune. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, coffee that came in cups without handles. Enzo and I sat at a corner table, his back to the wall, his eyes on the door. I'd changed 3 times that morning before settling on simple jeans and a sweater. Like what I wore mattered. Like I was the one being judged. "She's late," I said quietly. Enzo checked his watch. "She's always late." His voice was flat, but I could see the tension in the way he held his coffee cup, the way his jaw was locked tight. I wanted to reach across the table, cover his hand with mine, but we weren't alone. The cafe was full of people on laptops, couples sharing pastries, oblivious to the fact that something was about to break. The door opened. She was beautiful in the way that hurt to look at. Tall and thin, with dark hair that fell in perfect waves, wearing a camel coat that probably cost more than my car used to. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on Enzo, and something flickered across her face. Not love, not regret, relief. She walked toward us, and I watched Enzo's expression turn to stone. "Enzo," she said, her voice accented, European. "Thank you for meeting me." "Isabel." He didn't stand, didn't offer his hand. "Sit." She hesitated when she saw me, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I didn't realize you'd bring someone." "This is Claire," Enzo said. No explanation, no justification. Isabel's smile was knife-sharp. "A friend?" "Yes." She sat down across from us, folding her hands on the table. Up close, I could see the signs of strain. Shadows under her eyes, hidden by makeup. The way her fingers trembled slightly before she pressed them together. "You look well," she said to Enzo. "What do you want, Isabel?" No pretense, no pleasantries. She flinched. "I want to see my son." "Why now?" "Because I'm better. Because I've had time to—" "2 years," Enzo interrupted, his voice low and lethal. "You had 2 years to get better. 2 years while your son cried himself to sleep asking where his mother went. 2 years while I explained to a 3-year-old that sometimes people leave and it's not his fault." Isabel's composure cracked. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't lived with that every single day? I think you chose to live with it somewhere far away from the child you abandoned." "I didn't abandon him." Then what would you call it? Enzo leaned forward, and I saw the dangerous edge of him, the part that Marco's voice had warned about. You disappeared. No note, no call, nothing. I had to tell our son that his mother didn't want us anymore. That's not true. Tears welled in Isabel's eyes. I was drowning, Enzo. I couldn't breathe in that life. I couldn't be what you needed me to be. I needed you to be his mother. I tried. Her voice broke. I tried so hard, but every day felt like dying. The fear, the secrecy, the men with guns standing outside our door. I couldn't do it anymore. The cafe had gone quiet around us. People were pretending not to listen, but I could feel their attention. Enzo's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Then you should have talked to me. We could have figured something out. But you ran, and you left him to think it was his fault. I know. Isabel wiped her eyes. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. But I can't do that if you keep me away from him. You gave up the right to make demands. I'm not making demands. I'm begging. She looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw the woman she must have been once. Young, scared, in love with a man whose world was built on violence. Please, Enzo, let me see him. Just once. If he doesn't want to see me again, I'll go. But let me try. Enzo was silent for a long time. I watched him war with himself. Watched the anger and pain and something deeper, grief, maybe, play across his face. Then Isabel's eyes shifted to me. And who are you, really? She asked, her voice sharp again. Another woman trying to replace me? No one is trying to replace you, I said quietly. Then why are you here? Why are you sitting in my husband's apartment, playing mother to my son? Ex-husband, Enzo corrected coldly. You signed the papers yourself. Only because you gave me no choice. I gave you every choice. You made yours. Isabel turned back to me, ignoring him. Has he kissed you yet? Told you you're different? That you understand him in ways I never did? Isabel, Enzo warned. Does he tell you about the blood? She continued, her voice rising. About the men he's killed? The deals he's made? Or does he keep you in that pretty apartment and let you pretend he's just a businessman? The cafe was silent now. No pretending. I stood up. I think we're done here, I said. Claire? Enzo started. No, she's right. I shouldn't be here. I looked at Isabel. This is between you and him. I'm just... The window exploded. Glass rained down in a glittering spray, and someone screamed. Enzo was moving before I could process what was happening, grabbing me and pulling me down, his body covering mine as another window shattered. Not glass breaking. Gunfire. Stay down! Enzo hissed in my ear. I heard shouting, people running, the sharp crack of more shots. Enzo pulled me behind the counter, his hand pressed against my head, keeping me low. Through the chaos, I saw Isabel frozen at the table, her face white with terror. Enzo saw her too. For a split second, he hesitated. I saw the calculation in his eyes. Protect me or save her. Then Marco burst through the door, gun drawn, and everything descended into noise and smoke and fear. Enzo's arms tightened around me. I've got you, he breathed. I've got you. And even as the world shattered around us, I believed him. The safe house was smaller than Enzo's apartment, tucked above a closed bookstore in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Marco had driven us here in silence, checking the mirrors every 30 seconds, while Dante followed in a second car with Isabel. No one spoke. I sat in the back seat with Enzo's arm around me, my body still shaking, glass dust in my hair. My ears were ringing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the window exploding, felt Enzo's weight crushing me into the floor, heard the sound of bullets punching through plaster. We climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs. Marco went in first, gun drawn, clearing rooms. When he gave the all clear, Enzo guided me inside with a hand on my lower back. The space was simple. A couch, a kitchenette, 2 bedrooms, bars on the windows. Isabel stood by the door, her perfect coat torn at the shoulder, mascara streaked down her face. "Is Luca safe?" she asked, her voice raw. "He's with Rosa. She's taking him to the secondary location." Enzo's voice was mechanical, distant. He was in a different mode now, the one Marco had warned about. "He doesn't know what happened." "Good." Isabel wrapped her arms around herself. "That's good." Marco moved to the window, peering through the blinds. "They were waiting for you. Knew exactly where you'd be." Enzo's jaw clenched. "Which means someone talked. Or they've been watching you," Dante added from the doorway. "Following your movements, waiting for you to be exposed." "How many?" Enzo asked. "2 shooters. We got one. The other disappeared into the crowd." Marco turned from the window. "This was a message, Enzo, not an execution. If they wanted you dead, you'd be dead." "Then what did they want?" "To show you they can get close, that nowhere is safe." Marco's eyes flicked to me, then to Isabel. "That the people around you are vulnerable." The words hung in the air like smoke. Isabel made a small sound, half sob, half laugh. "This is what I left. This is exactly what I couldn't live with." "Then you should go," Enzo said flatly. "Get on a plane. Go back to wherever you've been hiding. You wanted out. Stay out." "He's my son. He's my son. I'm the one who's kept him alive for 2 years while you were drinking wine in Paris or wherever the hell you were." Enzo's voice cracked, just slightly. "You don't get to come back now and act like you're his savior." "I never said I was." Isabel's voice broke. "I just wanted to see him, to tell him I was sorry." "Sorry doesn't keep him safe." "And what does? Guns? Men following us everywhere? Living in fear?" She gestured at the safe house. "This isn't a life, Enzo. This is a prison. It's the life I chose, the life I can control." "You can't control everything." Isabel looked at me. "You can't protect everyone." Enzo followed her gaze, and when his eyes met mine, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear. Raw and undeniable. "Get some rest," he said to Isabel. "Marco will take you to a hotel in the morning, somewhere far from here." "What about Luca?" "I'll tell him you tried. That's all you get." Isabel's face crumpled, but she didn't argue. Dante showed her to one of the bedrooms and closed the door. Marco approached Enzo, his voice low. "I need to check the perimeter. Coordinate with Rosa. Make sure the boy's secure." Enzo nodded. Marco glanced at me one more time, something unreadable in his expression, then left with Dante. And suddenly, we were alone. The silence was suffocating. Enzo stood in the middle of the room, his hands clenched at his sides, his chest rising and falling too fast. I could see him unraveling, the control he'd maintained all day finally fraying at the edges. "Enzo," I said softly. "Don't." "Don't what? Don't tell me it's okay. Don't tell me we're safe. Don't..." His voice broke. "Don't look at me like I'm not the reason you almost died today." I stood slowly, moved toward him. He stepped back. "Claire, stop. No. I'm not safe. Being near me is not safe. You saw what happened. I saw you cover me with your own body. I saw you protect me. I should never have let you come. Should never have let you stay in my apartment. Let you near Luca. Let you..." He turned away, his shoulders shaking. "Marco was right. I've been careless. And you almost paid for it." I closed the distance between us, put my hand on his back. He flinched, but didn't pull away. "I'm still here," I said quietly. "I'm still breathing. Because of you." This time. He turned to face me, and his eyes were red-rimmed, devastated. What about next time? What happens when I'm not fast enough, when I can't get to you in time? Then that's the risk I'm choosing to take. You don't understand what you're choosing. Then help me understand. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of him. Stop protecting me from the truth and just tell me. All of it. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I sat beside him. My family has been in this business for 3 generations, he said quietly. Importing, exporting, controlling territories. I thought I could do it differently. Be smarter. Less violent. He laughed bitterly. I was naive. This world doesn't let you be gentle. It eats gentle people alive. Is that what happened to Isabel? Yes. She tried to love me, tried to accept what I was. But every day she lived in fear. Fear that I wouldn't come home. Fear that someone would hurt Luca to get to me. Eventually, the fear became bigger than the love. So she ran. He looked at me, and I swore I'd never put anyone in that position again. That I'd keep Luca safe by keeping everyone else away. But then I showed up. Then you showed up. His hand found mine, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. And you didn't run, even when you should have. Even now, after everything, you're still here. I'm still here, I whispered. He pulled me closer, pressed his forehead against mine, his breath warm on my lips. I can't lose you, he said, his voice breaking. I can't. Then don't let me go. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like fear and relief, and something that felt dangerously close to love. His hands cupped my face and I gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, trying to erase the space between us, the terror of the day, the knowledge that we were both choosing something that might destroy us. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Stay with me tonight, he whispered. Just tonight. Let me pretend the world isn't waiting outside that door. Okay, I breathed. He stood, pulled me to my feet, and led me to the second bedroom. We lay down together, fully clothed, his arms wrapped around me, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. Claire? Yes? Thank you. For staying. I pressed my lips to his collarbone. Nowhere else I'd rather be. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came back. The gunfire. The safe house. Enzo's kiss that tasted like desperation and promise. I turned over. His side of the bed was empty but still warm. I found him in the kitchenette, barefoot in yesterday's shirt, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. He looked softer in the morning light, younger somehow, the hard edges worn down by sleep. You're awake, he said, handing me a cup. You let me sleep. You needed it. He leaned against the counter, watching me. How do you feel? Truthfully? My body ached. My mind kept replaying the sound of shattering glass. But looking at him, at the way his eyes held mine with something tender and uncertain, I felt something else entirely. Safe, I said. His expression flickered. You shouldn't. Not yet. But I do. He set down his coffee and crossed to me, his hands finding my waist, pulling me close. For a long moment, we just stood there, breathing together, letting the quiet morning erase the violence of yesterday. Luca's okay, he said against my hair. Rosa called an hour ago. He thinks we're on a work trip. Asked when you're coming back. My chest tightened. What did you tell her? That I'd bring you home today. He pulled back to look at me. If that's what you want. Home, I repeated softly. To your apartment. Yes. The place where I've been sleeping in the guest room. Where Luca draws pictures of us going to the park. Where you make pancakes on Saturday mornings. Yes? I touched his face, traced the line of his jaw. That's not my home, Enzo. Something broke in his eyes. He started to pull away, but I held on. It's not my home yet, I continued quietly. But I think it could be. If you let it. He stared at me, searching my face for doubt, for fear. I let him look. Let him see everything. The terror from yesterday, yes, but also the choice. The deliberate, conscious choice to stay. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. How to keep you safe and let you in at the same time. Then we figure it out together. It won't be easy. There will be days like yesterday. Days when I have to leave, when I can't tell you where I'm going or when I'll be back. Days when Marco will follow you to make sure you're protected. He swallowed hard. Days when you'll wonder if loving me is worth it. And days when Luca laughs at something silly, when we have breakfast together, when you come home and I'm still there. I pressed my palm against his chest, felt his heart hammering beneath my hand. I'm not Isabel, Enzo. I'm not going to run the first time it gets hard. How can you be sure? Because I already know the worst parts. I've seen the danger. I've felt the fear. And I'm still here, choosing this. Choosing you. He kissed me then, slower than last night. Deeper. Like he was memorizing the shape of my mouth, the taste of my certainty. When we broke apart, his eyes were bright. I don't deserve you, he said. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. A sound came from the other bedroom. Isabel stirring. The moment shifted, reality seeping back in. Enzo's hand tightened on my waist. I need to take her to the airport. Make sure she gets on a plane and stays gone. Does she know you're sending her away? She knows. Dante told her last night. He sighed. She'll fight it. She'll say she has rights. But Luca's safety comes first. Will you let her say goodbye? He was quiet for a long time. I don't know. Part of me wants to protect him from that pain. But another part? He trailed off. Another part knows he'll always wonder. I finished. Yes. Then let him decide. When he's ready. When things are calmer. Let him choose if he wants to see her. Enzo studied me. You'd be okay with that? With her in his life? I'm not his mother, Enzo. I'm not trying to replace her. I searched for the right words. I'm just someone who wants to be there. For both of you. However that looks. He pulled me close again, buried his face in my hair. How did I find you? You didn't. Luca did. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half something that sounded like relief. 3 hours later, we pulled up to Enzo's building. Marco had swept the apartment twice. Dante was positioned in the lobby. The threat wasn't gone, but it had been contained. For now. Rosa opened the door, Luca behind her, and the moment he saw me, he ran. Claire, you're back! I caught him, lifted him up even though he was getting too big for it. I'm back. Papa said you had to work. I drew you 17 cars. 17? That's a lot of cars. I wanted to make sure you had enough when you came home. He looked at Enzo. She's staying, right, Papa? Enzo met my eyes over his son's head. If she wants to. I want to, I said. Luca beamed. Then you need to see my room. I organized the cars by speed. The fast ones are on top. He wriggled down and grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the hallway. I let him lead me, glancing back at Enzo. He was standing in the doorway watching us, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked at peace. That night, after Luca went to bed, Enzo found me on the balcony. The city stretched out below us, lights twinkling like stars that had fallen to earth. I talked to my lawyer, he said quietly, about changing things, making the business cleaner, safer. Can you do that? I can try. It'll take time. Years, maybe. But for you? For him? I'll try. I turned to face him. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I know, but I want to be someone worthy of what you're offering me. He pulled something from his pocket. A key. This is yours. To the apartment. To this life. He pressed it into my palm. I can't promise it'll always be easy, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to keep you safe. To make this work. I closed my fingers around the key, feeling its weight. Then that's enough, I said. He kissed me under the winter stars, and I tasted hope, fragile and fierce and entirely ours. Below us, the city hummed with life. Inside, Luca slept, surrounded by toy cars and dreams of parks and families that stayed. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. I was ready for it.